Good morning, good afternoon, whatever part of the country that you're in. Thank you so much for joining us today for our virtual user group. Today we're going to be talking about security snafus, and my teammate Brian is with me. And you know, they are more common than you think, and we run into them in our travels. And we thought this would be a good topic to talk about with all of you and to share kind of some insights that we've identified along the way. I'm going to just start with a few housekeeping items. This is a user group, so it really is about all of you, and we really want this to be interactive. So we would love for you to submit questions and ideas, things that maybe you've run into that we don't have on our list of things to talk about. We'll be monitoring the question box. We do not monitor the chat box, so please put any of your questions into the questions box. We'll answer as many questions as we can during the meeting. Both Brian and I will be monitoring that when we're not speaking or presenting. If for some reason we don't get to your question during today's meeting, we'll follow up with an email. After today's user group meeting is completed, you will be presented with a survey. We really would appreciate if you would just take a few moments to complete that. Your feedback is really just invaluable to us. There is a handout for today's meeting in the handout section of the GoToWebinar pane. However, these meetings are recorded. You can look at any past meeting out on our website. The handouts are really just like a few screenshots of things we think might be helpful for you. Your best reference back to anything we talk about is going to be to go out and just listen to the recorded session again. If you are interested in receiving a CPE credit for today's user group meeting, you must answer all 3 polling questions and complete the follow-up survey. On the survey, it will ask you if you require the CPE credit. We're monitored by a national organization, so I really have zero wiggle room on this. So we'll remind you every time we launch a polling question. We'll remind you if you're going to request the credit, we need you to answer all 3 of those and complete the survey. So just briefly, a little bit about, excuse me, Stamp-on-S. I think most of you are pretty familiar with us, and I know that a lot of you are frequent attendees of our user groups, and we might even be working with you. But just quickly, for those of you who are new to SN, SN is a pretty interesting company. It's actually been around for over 100 years. And for the last 60 or so years, the focus of the firm has really been on the AE space. So we have people from all different specialties and lines of work. You see some listed here, and all of us work together really to help people in the AE space, and we focus a lot on all of the challenges that you all face. So we have team members across the US, just like all of you. We've been remote for the last year, and that's our new model. And we serve clients throughout the country. Recently, I learned we have a client in France, so we're now international. And we are a Deltek partner and top 60 value-added reseller. So just briefly, a little bit about myself, in case we haven't met before. My name is Val Higgins. I've been working in the A&E industry really all of my professional career. I've also had the opportunity to be a consultant for Axiom and then for Deltek. I've been able to present workshops for different organizations, and I just really love working with clients and helping them find solutions that will help make their workflows, more efficient and reporting. And really kind of my area of focus is on project management training. So I'm going to let my teammate Brian introduce himself.
Yeah, thanks, Val, and good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Similar to Val, I've spent most of my career in the AE space, either on the consulting side, working for Axiom and Deltek, providing the Ajera implementation training and support there, or on the client side, sitting in that director of accounting seat, providing Ajera support and Ajera training internally as well, And similar to Val, I've had the opportunity to present and travel around the country at different workshops, you know, either through Deltec or through Stand-on-S.
Thanks, Brian. All right, we know you all are eager to talk and to hear about things, so let's get going. The things that we thought were the most meaningful to talk about with you today, and Brian actually pointed out to me this morning, I should have saved the top one for the last because it's kind of the most kind of scary thing that we find when we're looking at data. But have you inadvertently exposed confidential and or employee information? Believe it or not, you may have, and we'll show you how. And then we're going to talk about the security differences between giving task access and dashboard and reporting access. And it may not seem like really related to security, but report views are really a tool that can help engage your team with reporting. And there is a security component to that as well. So we're going to show you how to create some report views and how to avoid just common mistakes that we see in security setup. Some of those common mistakes aren't things that we would typically even know to look for related to updates of the software, and we're going to talk about that. And then we'll kind of finish up with project security setup tips. To be honest, when we lead clients through security setup, it's a 2-hour session to really go through project setup security for project managers. So we won't be hitting on everything, but we'll be hitting on the highlights for you. And then we'll potentially have some time for questions and answers. But again, this is a user group, so please start talking to us. Throw your questions, throw your ideas, throw things you've run into in that question box as we go. So we're going to kick off with our first polling question, and Brian's going to launch that for us. And that is, do you save employee information on the Notes tab of the employee record? And just as a reminder for all of you, if you're going to request the CPE credit, you will need to answer all 3 of the polling questions and complete the survey at the end of the, sorry about that, and complete the survey at the end of the meeting as well. So don't want anyone to miss out on that if you'd like that.
Yeah, and we'll give it just a few more seconds to let everyone have a chance to respond here. We've got quite a few of you have voted so far, so we do appreciate that. All right, I think I'm gonna go ahead and close it. Looks like it's slowing down here. And so a fair amount of you today did say yes. So hopefully after we visit this here, you'll see kind of why that's a big deal, and we can show you other areas to store that information.
Thank you, Brian. For those of you that see me popping around on my screen here, I'll just say that I'm on a 2-week workcation, so I'm not at my standard office. So if I'm a little clumsy on the computer today, I'll just ask you to be patient with me.
Yeah,
So
and Val, right now, at least on my end, I'm not seeing anything shared. I don't know if you've shared anything.
Yeah, I should be. Let me, let's see. Are you seeing my Ajera screen?
I do now, yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So we thought we would start off, like Brian said, we should have saved this one. It's the power-packed one for the end. But something that we commonly see, a service that we offer is systems assessment. So we're frequently going through clients' data and just like checking all of the setup. And this is something that we see a lot, where you may be storing notes on the Notes tab of the employee record. And what we see sometimes is that those notes might contain confidential information that you would never want anyone to see And we don't realize that we've exposed this information because we realize that in security, very few people have access to open the employee records. However, what we need to think about is there's a lot of very, benign and kind of innocent features in the software that would allow people to search for employees. So anywhere that I can access an employee list, I have the ability to click on this blue plus here and add in extra information. And as you'll see here, notes is one of those features that I can draw in. And now, without us knowing that we've done anything like this, we have inadvertently exposed this information where it could be very, very private. And we've seen information, we put in here examples of things that we have seen, when we look into client databases. Brian, I know that you've spotted this quite a bit. Anything to kind of add on here?
Well, yeah, I think you covered it well. And I mean, basically anywhere that an employee can be brought in, the biggest place that I think where people could see this would be on the Project Command Center. If you're using resources and resource planning, they can pull in the employee name into the Project Command Center as a resource on that job. And in that selection field, like Val showed, anybody can hit that blue plus sign and pull in those notes. So they are not protected, even though we think they might be because they're on the employee record. And so, that's why we wanted to call attention to it, because as Val mentioned, a lot of times we get into databases and we find that something you think is completely protected absolutely is not. And yeah, the bank account information, I mean, the financial data, that certainly is scary, and the bonuses and things like that. But most recently, we just actually saw a database where they were putting client or employee bank information in there. So that's really scary.
Yeah. So what we would recommend instead is create a custom field. And I don't have a specific notes question. I don't think I do. Yeah. So you could create a custom field on your employee record like we have here. And it's on a tab called Employee Confidential Information. You could add as many different types of custom fields as you wanted here. And then if by chance you're looking into your Ajera software today after this meeting, and you notice that you have something like this, add your custom field, and then it's super easy to make the transition. Just open your note, cut that information, open your new field, paste it in, you're good to go. Really quick to make the fix there. And then that information is no longer exposed. And I did pull up the Project Command Center, as Brian pointed out. When we're resourcing our projects, this is another area where we could easily select employee lists and see those notes. So that was that's a big one that we wanted to hit on for you. And then moving on, we wanted to talk briefly about, the difference in providing access to tasks in Ajera, in security, and dashboard and widget reporting, because there's really two areas where we kind of assign the security. So when you go into the security roles, and I'll just open the entry clerk role here. This one comes with the software. So in the security role, this is where, if you look here, we've got, this emulates our menu, our Ajera menu. So we've got the setup menu, we've got the company section, we've got setup items, we've got the manage tasks, we've got the reports. So this role setup is where we say, what can people do? So our entry clerk can enter time and expense and do all of these different things. But this does not correlate at all to dashboard reporting. To Ajera reports, it does. This is where we say, what Ajera reports can our different employees see? But the dashboard reporting, and I'm sure you all are familiar with this, is assigned in a different way, where we go into design mode, we select the tab or dashboard that we want to provide access to, and then here we would assign by roles. Now, something that we do see that I don't recommend, I think Brian's going to agree with me, as much as possible, when you're assigning security to dashboards and tabs, you want to assign it by the roles. It's so much easier to maintain and make changes. What we do see sometimes is that folks are assigning dashboard and tab access by picking on employee names. That becomes really hard to keep up with and hard to keep straight on who has what. Now, the one situation where this makes a lot of sense is typically the security dashboard. I'm sorry, supervisor dashboard, because supervisors don't always fit neatly into roles, right? PMs could be supervisors, principals could be supervisors, admins could be supervisors. So on the supervisor dashboard, it's pretty typical. We're gonna have to cherry pick some names. But as much as possible on your other tabs, I think you're going to find it easier to keep up with things if you use these roles. So Brian, what would you add to this? Anything that I'm forgetting to talk about?
Well, yeah, I was just going to emphasize the importance or the benefit to you all by doing it by role here. In fact, I just came off a call with a client this morning that they have a fair amount of employees, and they're hiring project managers, and historically they've done the security on their widgets and tabs by person. So that means every single time they hire a new project manager, instead of having the dashboards automatically appear because they did it by role, they have to go through each individual tab and check that person's name to make sure that they have access to what they're supposed to. So as Val mentioned, the maintenance of it is just a lot more time consuming to complete that. So yeah, as much as you can, and I understand there are exceptions to that too.
Yeah.
The other thing too, and I don't know, Val, if you were planning to show it, but to help those who maybe are currently doing it by person versus role, there's the security tab,
Mm-hmm.
which shows what is assigned to people in the moment. So this can help out, especially if you have a lot of tabs or dashboards. You can very quickly see which tabs are assigned to which person.
Yeah, and this is kind of how I typically like to do a review or audit, if you will. Like Brian said, and everyone should have this. This is standard. Comes with your Ajera. If you don't see it in this menu, it's either because you don't have admin rights or it's just not assigned, right? So it's there. If you go into design mode, you should see it. But it literally shows every single tab and dashboard you have and the different roles that are assigned to it. So this is a really great way to kind of just audit. Now I'm in a sample database, and so it's much different than your database is going to look like. First of all, I have way too many dashboards in it, but my security is mostly assigned to administrator because that's how we log in. But this is a good example here where you can see all of the different roles that have been assigned to that dashboard. So just do an audit. And I don't know, Brian, if you agree, but I think it's a good idea to do an audit of these kinds of items maybe once a year. It's like getting your car, deep cleaned or something like that. Think about a thorough housekeeping of your Ajera once in a while.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, it is something, and going through it maybe at the same time you evaluate if tabs and dashboards are still being used, you evaluate who has them.
Yeah, because I'm going to date myself here, but some of you will remember the Star Trek episode called Trouble with Tribbles, and those little creatures like kept multiplying and multiplying until the whole, spaceship was taken over with them. So I think widgets are similar to that. People have a tendency to copy tabs and create so many versions that, I commonly hear people saying, we've got too much. And so, yeah, just doing that kind of housekeeping. Okay, I do see we have a question. I'm so excited, Brooke. Thank you for putting something in. So Brooke, sorry I missed your comment. How can we get the security tab if we don't see it? I have full access and I don't have it. So this is what I would check on, Brooke. Go into design mode and then see if you see it out here. It could be that it hasn't been assigned to anyone, and then it won't show up unless you go into design mode. But once you're in design mode, you should see every dashboard tab that's in the system here. I don't know if this is in the widget gallery. Do you, Brian?
I don't, but I know it's a standard tab, so as long as it hasn't been deleted, it should come with the program.
Yeah, it's not in the widget gallery, but, oh, okay, great. Brooke found it in design mode, perfect. Okay, so moving on, and please, you guys, put your questions out there, your comments. We wanted to talk for just a couple of minutes about report views. So it's again, I know I'm going to say this too much today, but it's very common when we're helping people review their security to look into their security roles and see like just all of these standard reports checkmarked. That means that these project managers have reports that potentially have information you don't want them to see. Not every company is comfortable rolling out profit information to project managers. They would prefer to assess their performance on spent values. So important to know that some of these reports do have profit. But to me, the biggest challenge with the out-of-the-box reports, and I'm just going to quickly kind of walk you through an example. And when I say out of the box, I mean reports that come with your Ajera. They're loaded into your Ajera when you got Ajera. And some of these roles, were also kind of predefined for you. And if you haven't done an audit of them, they'll be like they were when you got your software. So the project earnings, I think, is a really great way to demonstrate why report views are so important. If I were to run this report, just run it, it's going to have some preset parameters that might not really make a lot of sense. And so the end user needs to make selections by clicking on this blue plus to get really, I don't want to say accurate, but relevant, I guess, results for what they're looking for. And some of these choices are things that your end users that really aren't in your accounting team, they may not understand what they're selecting. So I think a good example of that here is you can see that this report uses a profit basis. So it shows profit, but you get to select the basis that profit calculation is derived from. And we've got some choices here. We have spent profit, which is our spent value minus our loaded cost if we've got include overhead and cost checkmarked. We've got our billed profit, which is our billed amount minus our loaded cost if we have this box checked. And then we have billed plus WIP. That's going to probably blow your project managers' minds. I'm guessing. And do we really even want or expect for them to understand these things? And more importantly, I think, and Brian, I'm really eager to hear what you have to say about this. More importantly, I think that when we're rolling out project performance, financial metrics of any sort, we want a management perspective on how people are looking at this information. So in other words, I don't want Brian looking at things this way and Val looking at things this way, right? We want the team assessing information in the same way. So just that one field I was able to talk about for like a minute. So the point I'm trying to get across here is like, this is, I believe, too much to expect a project manager to remember just to run a report. So before I create a view, I'd like to really have Brian weigh on this too.
Well, yeah, agreed. I mean, I can speak from personal experience when you've got project managers who are looking at things, you know, they could be looking at it one way, we're looking at it a different way, and the picture is completely different because if you look at your profit on spent versus billed, it could be very, very different. And then additionally, like Val was talking about, we really want to make this as easy as possible for our PMs. We don't want to put up any barriers for them to use the system. So if we've told them, hey, all you have to do is run the report, you don't have to worry about any settings, we're going to get a lot more adoption out of using that report than if they have to tweak it every time they go in.
Yeah, exactly. So real easy to create views. I'll show you on this report.
Hey
So you,
Val, real quick too, before we get too far, there was a question, just so someone wanted to know where the role is assigned in the employee record, just to show that really quickly.
yeah, absolutely. Let me just minimize out of this. So in your employee records, if you edit any employee record, you'll see here this roles box. And so we'll kind of shift gears for a little bit of a second here as long as we've got this open, because what Brian and I wanted to talk to you about here also is something that we see is where people have multiple roles. And I actually think I have an example set up of that for you. So, this is something that people do just, I think, because they think it's necessary, right? Chris, even though he's a principal, is also an employee. So I'm going to give him the employee role and the principal role. This can cause, it used to cause access issues. The Learning Center would tell us it still could. More than anything, I think it creates confusion, right? And the thing is if your roles are set up appropriately, you should never need to assign multiple roles. And Chris Meehan here, he's a perfect example of this because Chris is the president of the company, right? He's a principal as his employee type. So Chris probably has a lot of access to data in the system and employee cost and things like that. So the principal role contains everything the employee role contains plus more. So no need to give Chris both of these. Chris should just be assigned the principal role. So we'll show you how you can do a quick audit of the roles that are assigned to your employees also. But that's where you'll find that, Susan.
All right, and then I'm actually going to go ahead and we forgot to launch our polling question here. So I'm going to launch that here real quick while you get the views pulled back up. So our second polling question actually is, do you know how to create the reporting views? So that's what Val is going to show us here in just a second. Just a reminder, as a polling question, this is our second of 3. We do need you to answer all 3 if you require CPE credit today. So we'll leave it open here just a second longer here to give everyone an opportunity to vote. Thank you for those of you who have already voted. So All right, looks like voting is kind of trickling down here. So I'm gonna go ahead and close out that poll and really split 50-50. Some of you are able to, or already know how to do this, and then the other half do not. So take it away, Val.
Awesome. So we get to teach half of you something new, and maybe the rest of you will pick up on something also. So again, we're going to click on our blue plus in any report that we want to create a view of. And then we're going to click here in the views. And you can see I have already created a view, but we'll create a new one just so we can walk all the way through it with you. So we'll create a new one. Oh, I'm hoping principal in charge is one of my options to filter by. We'll say project earnings by principal in charge. Now, I learned a lesson the hard way because I thought I would be fancy and change the report titles when I was first learning how to use Ajera. I don't recommend we do this. Let's just let the report title align with the report, because otherwise it can become confusing. So I personally don't really recommend changing that report title. We could change the sort if we wanted, because I plan on building a PIC. Maybe I want to see this sorted by my project managers. I could pick the status of projects. They really give you a lot of options here, right? So I could see all projects except for closed. I'm going to stick to my active or preliminary. If I am using the business development feature and I want to see that business development cost included, I can check that box. And this limit by is pretty cool. So you can, this does correlate really to security. So I can say I want to create a view limited by principal in charge. And I'm going to show you how we assign this to the principal in charge security role. But now any principal in charge will be able to run this report, and they will only see projects where they are the principal in charge. They'll be sorted by the PMs that they have oversight on. You can pick your profit basis. I personally like Build Plus WIP. And then you have some other options here. We always want to make sure our overhead is included in our cost, because this report does include profit, and that's important. And then I'm going to say, okay. And I'm going to close. Now, I don't know if this is still an issue, but years ago, if you hit this close button, you would potentially lose the view you just created. So I have just developed a habit over the years to always use the closed button. Brian, did you ever run into that?
Yeah, and it wasn't really, I don't know, there wasn't really any rhyme or reason to it, but like you, I just kind of adapted to always use the button versus the window, the X at the top.
Yeah, so we'd recommend don't do that, do close. And then we'll say, okay, and we'll close this report. Now we'll need to refresh our Ajera menu, but this is pretty cool. That report we just created is here on our report menu. And because I'm an administrator, I'm going to have automatic access to it. And notice there is no blue plus. Now I am not a PIC on any projects, so it's going to be blank for me. But you can see how this just makes things 10 times easier for your employees. So there is one extra step we have to take. After we create our report views, we need to then assign security to anyone outside of the administrator group that we would want to have this. And since we designed this for the principals, we would open the principal security role. We would go to the reports tab. And I really like this. Anything that's a view is going to have view in parentheses behind it. So it makes it really easy to find them. And here's the project earnings by PIC that we just created. I check this box and I save. And now my principals will have access. But one thing to note with security changes like that too, your your employees will have to log out and log back in for the security changes to take place. Brian, anything you want to talk about with the report views?
No, I think you covered it well there. We did just have a quick question, kind of unrelated to the, well, actually, we just had a question come in that is related to reporting views. So there, the question was, can a report view be deleted?
Yeah, so where you would want to do that is we would go back to the original report, the mothership, I guess we could call it. And then we would go into our views. And then we're going to see our different views, and I can delete and close and say, okay. Boom. And when I refresh, did I miss something?
No, you're good. I was just going to say, yeah. So, and then there was another question related to deletion of items, and that was, can you delete a security role? And the question or the answer is yes, but it's a little tricky. It can't be assigned to anybody, even if they're inactive. So if you've got inactive employees who are assigned that security role, it's going to tell you you can't delete it.
And you have to also unuse it from any dashboards you've assigned it to.
That's correct. Yep.
So it's a little bit of a laborious task, so it can be done. And then the employees dashboard here is where you can quickly assess all of your employee roles as well. And I think this is a good thing to audit too. And on any of these dashboards, you can group them. And so I could just group that by role. And now I can quickly see, and it's like, oops, why is Mark Royce in this role, not this role? This would also help you identify if you have employees assigned multiple roles, if you wanted to clean that up. But I was just helping someone the other day. They had like, I don't know, 4 or 5 security roles that we wanted to delete. And so we literally searched on the roles that we wanted to delete, which you can also do here. So we had named ours do not use. So we had 5 that included do not use, but you can search on anything here. So let's say we didn't use the entry clerk role. Oh, it's not assigned to anything. Bad choice. You can search by any role name though quickly, and then identify all of the tabs where you would go and unuse that role. You would just uncheck it in order to delete those roles.
Yeah, and I was just going to say too, depending on how many employees you have and how many tabs you have, like Val said, it can be a laborious task to kind of unuse those. So like she mentioned, another solution, if you didn't want to go through that task or that labor, would be to rename it inactive, do not use, keep like entry clerks, do not use, or whatever it may be. That way it doesn't get assigned to any new folks going forward.
Yeah, something like that. And then you can push these around. You can order these. So typically what I would do is move all of the ones that we don't want to use to the bottom. So unfortunately, the security roles, overhead groups, there's items in Ajera that you can never delete. So you just have to be careful with it, which is a perfect lead in to the next thing we wanted to talk about, which is creating too many roles. And so that was actually such a perfect lead in, with your question, Roger, because now we've seen it really can be hard to delete these. Now, the other day, I was helping a client and we had done all of that work that Brian and I just talked about. We had unused the role everywhere, but we had 2 terminated employees where we couldn't, and it had something to do with email addresses. So we were just stuck with this. We had to just leave it this way. So for that reason, we we would really encourage you to think about the roles that you're tempted to create. So Brian's probably going to have some good examples, but I ran into something recently where we had a role of principal and a role of partner set up in the software. And when we looked at the two roles, they were actually exactly the same. So it's common for these higher level employees to be able to see cost and to be able to see financial statements and more reports. Well, the two roles were really the same. We didn't need them. So in that case, we were able to clean it up. We combined them. We got rid of one of them. Another common thing I've seen is creating a marketing role, when in truth, the marketing person needed the exact same access to the projects and project reports as project managers. And so just because we have a marketing director doesn't mean we have to have a marketing director role. If the access that person needs is already accommodated by a role we have, we can just use that. It's like, it's not visible on the front end to the employee. It's not something that's going to confuse the end users. I don't know, Brian, what nuances would you add to that?
I think you covered that well, but something just came to mind that, and I don't know if you've encountered this, Val, but I get this question a lot where, the administrator role, which is the full privilege, right? I get asked a lot, does my IT person really need administrator rights? Because I'm being told they do to do updates, etc. And unfortunately, in the IT world, administrator means they administer the server or whatever, and so they immediately hear that and think, "Yep, that's what I need." But in Ajera, they do not need administrator rights, and so just something that I've encountered a lot, where the IT team has access to pay rates and cost and all the financial data just because we think they need that administrator privilege because they have it elsewhere.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. And I've seen that a bunch too, because we really don't want to even, I want to be politically correct in the way I say this. I mean, even if we trust that person implicitly, which obviously we do, they have access and maintain all of the data that runs our company. We have kind of like this fiscal responsibility to protect private information, So, you could create a role for them where they had the ability to, what am I looking for here? I've probably passed it. Oh, here. They need the ability to do some things on this tab that other employees wouldn't need. But yeah, I agree with what you said 100%, Brian. I just quickly want to go to Susan's question. On the employee list, you're not seeing the role. I do believe that's something that we add in to our views. I don't think it comes with the standard widget or dashboard. And I think that is just a standard. Yeah, that's not a formula. That's just a standard field. So you can go into design mode, Susan, and just add a column and search for role, and it will come up. And then once you've added it, you can drag it to any position that you want. And I highly recommend you all do that. It's super, super helpful to be able to see that and kind of do that audit regularly to make sure we have people in the right roles. All right. I think, Brian, we're ready for polling question number 3.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and launch that now. Yeah, so our third and final question here is, do you currently have security roles that provide access to the Manage Custom Report Inquiry features? And again, just a reminder, this is our third polling question. You do need to answer all 3 if you're looking for CPE credit today. So I'll leave this poll open just a little bit longer, give everyone an opportunity to get their votes in. Thank you again for those who have already voted. All right. Just in the interest of time, I'm not going to leave it open too much longer. Looks like the voting is trickling down here, so I'm going to go ahead and close out that poll. And again, 50-50 here again, really on, having access to that.
Great. So we're gonna go through the project manager role here, which Ellen, you have a question that was the perfect lead in to what I'm about to talk about. Like I mentioned at the top of the meeting, we could talk about the project manager role for easily an hour and a half, 2 hours. And we don't have that time today. So I'm gonna, Brian and I have kind of identified some high points that we think are important to call out. So, Ellen's question was, with the project manager role, you can only see your projects, but won't the marketing people need to see all projects? So that is dependent on your setup, Ellen. And if you have your security set up where PMs only see their projects, you're absolutely correct. You would want to create a higher role so that the marketing person could see all projects. But this is an area of confusion that I wanted to clear up. And, I will freely admit to you, I've been using this software since I think 2007. And, I'm in it every day, all day like you guys. This is all we do. And I still have to go to the Learning Center sometimes to get things straightened out. So I had to do a deep dive into the PM security role last week for someone. There's two ways in Ajera to limit access for project managers. And we're talking about the project command center because we control dashboards and reports differently, right, through security. So we're talking about seeing projects in the project command center and having the ability to change projects in the project command center. So when we check this box here that's on the general tab, the first tab of our security role, it says view my projects only. And when it says my projects, that means if an employee is the project manager, the principal in charge, or the marketing contact on any phase of the project, they will be able to see that project in the project command center. When I check this box, it makes a box disappear out here that says change my projects only. So watch what happens when I uncheck this. So now this means all project managers can see all projects in the project command center, but now we have an option to say, okay, they can see them all, but they can only change their own projects. There's a little bit of a hiccup here, friends. This particular box is looking at the top project level only. So if you have multiple project managers on a project, the only one that will be able to make changes to that project is the person who is assigned as PM at the project level. So for a lot of firms, this just won't work because I have multiple PMs engaged on the project and I need them all to be able to maintain their pieces of the project. So really important to understand the difference there. So if we do have that situation where we have multiple PMs, we kind of have two options. We can let people see all projects and change all projects by checking neither box. Or we can check this box, which now means they'll see any projects where they're any one of those three names on the project, and they can update their projects as they need to. Brian, anything to add to that?
No, just that admittedly, like you said, there is some limitations when we're playing with the security for the project managers. And sometimes, to be honest, it is a little bit of trial and error. As Val mentioned, sometimes it doesn't work as intended or as straightforward as you think it would be. So we have had a couple questions come in while you were talking there, Val. One specifically I wanted to address here with the group related to assigning employee roles. Does it, because we had mentioned we recommend only having one role, but the question is, will what if there's a dashboard that only is assigned to the employee role and we want to give that to someone else? So in that case, you would go to that tab and then assign it to the project manager role as well, so that both the project manager and the employee roles can see it. That way you don't have to have the employee role listed on that person's profile. So you would just give it to every role that you would want to see that. And then the other question too, and just wanted to make sure there was some clarity that we provided on this. When we were talking about the employee notes earlier, and we were talking about how those notes are not protected, question came up is, what if the project managers are adding a resource and they see all employees as an option? Can they see everyone's pay information? So the answer there is no, unless you have it in the notes field. If that person doesn't have access to the employee on their security role, all they can see is a list of people. They can't edit the actual record to get to the pay information.
Yeah. And I'm going to log in as a PM here in a second so that you can see that too. So another thing we wanted to point out to you is that, if you're paying attention to release notes, and we hope you are, because they're really worthwhile to read, because that's where they tell us about changes they're making in the software. But when Deltek rolls out new features in Ajera, and we have not noticed consistency in this. Brian and I were comparing notes on this morning. When they roll out new features, a few years ago, this was a new feature. And when they rolled it out, it was automatically checkmarked. Another thing I've noticed is that, as you all know, let me find the right tab here. But there are some on that one, but this is the one I'm looking for. Yeah. So as you know, I think it's been maybe 2 years now where they added the option for us to limit entry type on phases to labor or expense and consultant. When they added these, they were automatically allowed on all roles too. So just what we wanted to bring to your attention is that when you read the release notes and you see that there's notice of a new feature, check your security roles to see whether it was automatically engaged. And if you don't want people to have access to that tool, certain roles, then make those updates. There are some tabs that we see people marking as, well, these are big mistakes here. The project managers can make changes to beginning balances. There's a couple of tabs. The beginning balances is one, the permissions is one, and the revenue tab. Those are 3 tabs that typically only finance and administrators should have access to. And there is an option to hide those tabs. A lot of times we see people have them set to never allow changes. We really recommend that you just hide them, because, and I'm going to show you an example of this in just a second. And that way, people don't even have to pass them by. They don't even know that they're there, because they have really no relation to the project manager role. So we just wanted to point that out to you as well. So I know we've only got a few minutes left here. I do want to quickly log in as a PM, because I want to show you one more thing, which I forgot to show you in the security role. So when we're looking at the project access, this is the most complicated role or piece of the role there is, because literally you make a decision on every field in the project command center as to, can people touch it? And if so, we have the option of locking them down. So like, people can never change this field. They will see it, it will be grayed out. You can say people can always change this field. There's a third option that we don't see a lot of people tapping into, but we think it has value, which is allow changes until budget is final. And you'll see I have that set here on a few of these fields. So I want to show you what that does. And so this is a field that, whoever in your office is checking projects to make sure they're set up correctly. Once they have completed their review, they can check this final budget. When I say yes, you'll see that things look different, and I cannot click into these contract fields and change these anymore. And so in the security role, when we set certain fields to say, yeah, let project managers change these fields until I click this button, I want to show you what that looks like from the project manager's perspective here quickly.
Yeah, and while you're logging in as the project manager, we actually used this field, and I've seen it used this way before, the allow changes until budget's final. Even if you don't, quote, finalize your budget, not all companies do, but even if you don't, you can still use that checkbox as an option to essentially lock down the changes to the project command center. So we used it for the project manager team. And that way, if they needed to make a change to the budget, they had to go to someone and tell them, hey, I have to make a change. So I need a change order or I need a new PO, whatever it may be, versus just giving them the authority to change that mid-cycle.
Yeah, so it's about facilitating conversation, right? It's not so much about just shutting people down, but making sure that project managers and the accounting team are talking when they need to. So I've logged in as Mary Boyle. She's a project manager. I pulled this field in so that you could see this is a project where the budget was finalized. And you can see that Mary can't change any of these fields, but also any other field that we said, let her change it until we've checked that box. These are still here. She can still see the information here. She just no longer can make changes, like Brian said, until she goes, and has a conversation with someone who should also be on the loop in that. So I'm going to go back to our presentation here and just kind of take us home and finish out our class for today. Brian, are you seeing the PowerPoint again?
Yep, we do.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to quickly go through this. Like I said, this handout was just meant to kind of point out a few things that we thought would be helpful for you as a written kind of takeaway. But this user group, like all of them, is recorded. It takes a couple of days for this to hit our website, but you can go out and look at any past user group recordings too. We've had some pretty cool topics. So, as a takeaway from today, our best practice tips are review those notes in your employee records. Do that today. And if you need to get confidential information moved, just create a custom field, cut and paste, you'll be good to go. We really recommend, creating roles that are defined by position and function rather than naming them for people. And then just really give a lot of thought to creating new roles. Do I really need it, or is there another role that would work and I'm just thinking I have to align this with a person? Try to avoid those multiple roles for employees. We really don't need it. It can cause a lot of confusion. And so as much as possible, stick to the one role. And remember, they're built kind of in a hierarchy, so we shouldn't need more than one role per person. Review your reports. I would really do a thorough review of my reports that I've assigned to my project managers and my principals and really all of my employees, and think about if a view would be better than the out-of-the-box reports. And then I'd recommend looking at the reports that they've been assigned. Do you even want them to have them? Because a lot of that is default, when you get the software. Consider engaging the final budget option. Like Brian said, he had great success with it. So consider using that. And then we just recommend that you complete a review of your security roles to identify potential issues. Keep your eyes open for new features that maybe have been activated in roles where you don't want them to. Consider hiding the beginning balance, permission, and revenue tabs so that people aren't confused by them. And then just to wrap it up, we so appreciate you joining us. We really love these meetings, and we're so happy that you all seem to be liking them too. We want this to be truly user groups. So we would love to have you co-present with us. So if you've got a success story, if you've figured out something that makes life easier that you think that your other Ajera friends would benefit from, just please shoot me an email, let me know. I'd love to coordinate with you. We've had a couple users co-present and it's really fun. If there's topics you would like for us to cover in future meetings, please let us know. We'll try to work those in. Please do complete the survey. Let us know how we're doing and give us, your thoughts about that. And like Brian reminded you, we'll need you to complete that and all 3 polling questions to get that CPE if you need it. If you haven't yet joined our virtual Ajera LinkedIn community, we're really trying to create a space where you all can talk to each other and where we can talk to you and share ideas. So consider joining that. And again, just really please share your ideas with us. We love hearing from you. Next month's topic, I'm going to have a co-presenter, T. Wayne Owens. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of him. We recently acquired the T. Wayne Owens CPA firm, and he is one of the nation's renowned experts on FAR and governmental compliance reporting. And we're going to be talking about how to optimally set up your Ajera for that kind of reporting as well. So thank you all very much. I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week, and hopefully we'll see you next month. Thank you, Brian.